don't be offended by the truth. They be offended because you called out the truth. Simple as that. They don't want to hear any other narrative that makes them look bad. One thing I can't stand at this big grown age is somebody who acts like cause and effect does not exist. Like, yes, your actions caused this outcome. Yes, what you did lit the match. Like, why are you surprised and playing victim?
Guys, Chico, they never lie. That's how you know somebody doesn't respect you. They listen to reply, not to be understood. They cut you off. They minimize what actually matters to you. They laugh at your boundaries, and then they call you sensitive when you try to hold the line. They show up late, they cancel last minute, forget the things you've told them, because in their world, your time, your energy, even your voice aren't a priority. They're just an option. You see, there are two kinds of people. Those who adjust when they realize they've actually hurt you, and those who expect you to adjust so they don't have to change. You don't need to be disrespected loudly to be disrespected deeply. Sometimes you'll see it. It's just in their tone, in their patterns, in the silence after you're known. Respect isn't what they say when they're watching. It's how they act when they think you'll.
Examining his own attitude towards the possibilities of peace, towards the Soviet Union, towards the course of the Cold War.
Art muscle. It was a way of making me feel that they were a part of me.
You see it on the bridge. I think if the government had to change the screw in the bridge, they have to shut it down. They got state troopers out there. They got planes closed. They got those strange machines. How did they get up?
Peace and blessings to the folks. How's everybody doing? Shout out to my poets, writers, content creators. Much love to everybody. Shout outs to the people. I got Sid in the building. You know what time it is on this Wednesday evening. 73 salutes to you. Appreciate you for tapping in with us. I hope all is well with you. I hope your week is going good. I appreciate the love. I appreciate the love wholeheartedly. I hope you get a chance to enjoy this show. Is about to be an interesting one. I'm going to bring her up. I'll be in the background doing what I do typically. Let's get her up. Let's start this show up. Sydney, what up? What up? What up? What up? You're on mute. You're on mute. You're on mute.
Good thing I was, because we have a whiner right now. She's upset because I've been seeing. Okay, here. I've been seeing this viral puzzle on YouTube, which is like the garlic thing, and you have to try and figure out how to like fit the cloves into the garlic so the box closes, and there's only like one solution. So I was very curious. I like toys that like look like actual objects. So I was like, I want one. So I ended up getting one for myself and one for the kids. But shocker, it became both of them for the kids and nothing for me. But at least I was able to solve it once before they took it away. But yeah, it was pretty cool. I like little like the mind fiddler puzzles. Other than that, my book's finally in. It's all the editing is done. So now all they have to do is put it together for me.
That's what's up. That's what's up. Congratulations. Congratulations. I love that news. Great. I'm glad. I'm happy for you. So what's the next steps with that?
So now like the cover's done, all the pieces are in the book, and everything's edited. So they are sending it to like book production. So they're creating the actual physical books, and I guess they'll be doing all the printing. And then once the book is printed, that's when they start all of the like advertising parts. Denali, go in the playroom with that. Go somewhere else. 2-year-old man. So yeah, the next step is basically going to be marketing it. I'm super excited because one of their parts of their advertising is for 24 hours, I'll get a billboard in New York Times Square. So I'm like, that's so cool. But then my book will also be available in like 70 countries, from like Amazon, Borders, Barnes and Noble. I think they do stuff with like smaller bookstores too. So yeah. And then yeah, to answer your question, I'm a poet, so I have one that I just finished. And that one's like I don't want to say social justice, because not exactly that. It's political. It talks about the country, what's happening, groups that are being marginalized, corporations, stuff like that. And then I have a second book that will be done in April on environmental topics. So yeah, I have made a book.
Go 3645 salutes to you. I'm gonna turn it over to you. Congratulations. I know the people are here for something. I know I'm here to listen. So I'm gonna turn it over to you. I'm gonna let you do your thing. And y'all get comfortable, grab something to drink, some snack on, and yeah, I see y'all in a bit.
All right. So for those of you that are new, it seems like we have a couple newbies in the comment section. My name is Sydney Lindquist. I have my bachelor's degree in psychology and my master's degree in environmental education. I very often cover topics around environmental science, climate change, stuff like that. But sometimes I also like to go into other topics that interest me. I'm a chronic reader, researcher, so I like to delve into a bunch of different areas. And my areas of specialty are definitely like psychology, education, sciences, and a little bit into history as well. My day's really well. I hope yours is going well as well. So today I wanted to talk about homeschooling versus regular schooling. And under that umbrella of regular schooling, I'll also talk about the different types of schools that there are, because they are going to be different and offer different things. This is something that's been on my mind lately because, as you probably hear in the background, I have kids. Hopefully they're not too disruptive right now. But I was always a very adamant, I'm going to homeschool. I'm only going to do homeschooling. Like once they get to middle school, then I'll give them the option. But as they got older, give me one moment. My bad. They love to bounce off of each other and make as much noise as possible. So I wanted to talk about homeschooling versus regular schooling because there's a lot going on in public schools right now. There's also a lot of forms of homeschooling. Some of them are better and some of them are a little bit more anti-productive, I guess, if you want to call it that. So I just kind of wanted to talk about the various aspects of schooling, and also address some of the like pros and cons of each type. Just because the reason why this is coming to mind is I decided to actually put my son in school because I realized that he would thrive more in a social situation than I would have initially thought. And so I decided to put him in school to help him. So yeah, I just wanted to address a lot of the differences between the types of schooling, how to do so properly, some of the issues of both sides, and yeah, also dispel some misnomers and stuff like that. Before I get into it, though, I did want to mention this is on the news recently. Pretty cool scientific thing. A meteor fell in Ohio. I think it was like 2 days ago. So if you're in that area, there's a chance you might be able to find a fragment. But it doesn't happen super often. But they did get a really cool picture of the meteor coming in, the fireball. So yeah, if you're interested in that type of stuff, there's some cool videos and pictures out there of that event that just happened. So to start, I'll kind of define the different types of schooling. There's homeschooling, which I'm sure most of us are familiar with, where the parents take control of the education or they hire tutors to tutor the child in the home setting. And in this way, the parent, with guidance from it depends per state. Some states require you to actually validate that you're verify that you're following their specific curriculum and do like constant tests and stuff like that. But some are a lot more lenient. Like in California, they're fairly lenient, and as long as you register your child every year, they don't quite care exactly what you do, as long as you're still teaching the typical math, science, reading, whatnot. Some of them are even more lenient. A lot of the my bad. They're fighting over a single toy as usual. So my daughter's upset because my son got a brand new toy car, and when they first get the car, I allow them to have the chance to play with their toy. And she's not happy about sharing, as 2-year-olds are. So you'll have to ignore her. I apologize if it's distracting. Definitely distracting for me. But anyway, so yeah, homeschooling, it can be very flexible. It can allow you to have liberty of how you teach, what you teach, whether you want to use worksheets or experiences. There's obviously a lot of different methods to introduce your kids to different topics. But it allows for flexibility, especially for parents that have, it's very common in religious communities where they want to control the type of information that their child has access to, or they can kind of mold it to match their religious education standards. It also is done by parents that are unhappy with the school system, which is where I would have fallen. Because of my background in an education, I've worked for, I'd say, around 5+ years working with school-age children, ranging from 5 to middle school level. And then I've also done work in high schools as well. I felt confident that I would be able to educate my kids. I'll get into this a little bit later, but I ended up, as I said, choosing regular schooling. There are the last group of homeschoolers is typically parents whose kids have disabilities or very specific needs, or are like on the opposite end of the spectrum. They're extremely intelligent to the point that they're way above their peers, and so they are given homeschooling. That way they can really teach to the level of that child. And so if a child has very specific needs, special needs, unusual needs that a school cannot provide, a parent might also do homeschooling. And then I guess the last category would be travelers, military families, parents that have to travel a lot. they might also choose to homeschool their child. That way the child is getting a consistent education and they don't have to worry about putting them in school, pulling them out, putting them in school, pulling them out. So every parent will have their own reasons for choosing homeschooling, but I think it does have a bad rap because of its association with the religious crowd, and also the anti-school crowds. The new term nowadays that I've been hearing is unschooling, which they completely throw out the idea of school and just kind of like teach through absorption. But I think if done well, homeschooling is a good option if your child falls into one of these categories where they have different needs than ordinary school children. It's just the parent needs to be involved. This is with homeschooling. I think part of the reason why it can be so difficult is the parent really needs to have a diverse set of skills and be willing to hire individuals who are able to teach two skills that they don't have skills in. For regular educational settings, there's a couple different types. You have your standard public schools. Those are basically run by the state, and they run off of curriculum set by the State Board of Education, as well as some national standards as well. There are charter schools, which are very similar to public schools, but they, while they get money from the public education system, they're still allowed to operate differently. So they'll still operate with a lot of the same standards that public schools will have, but again, they'll be allowed to do things differently with the money that they're getting. The school that my son just got accepted into is a charter school, and so it is a free education. It's not a private education, but they operate differently than private schools. For example, public schools. For example, this particular school that I selected for him is considered a low-tech school, which is one of the biggest priorities, concerns that I had, which again, I'll get into. They choose not to use technology to a large degree in schools. They have access to it. The kids will have laptops. They're taught how to type. They're taught how to use programs on the computer and whatnot. But it's not the main source of their education. They do a lot more hands-on activities, like learning through doing, while also heavily encouraging math, reading, stuff like that. So I chose the school specifically because I wanted my son to have his education focused around old school practices, because personally, just my background in psychology, I've seen the damage that technology has on kids' brains. And more research is showing that too much technology, too much access to phones and tablets and touchscreens, computers, is not helping our children. There are some exceptions, but for the most part, the way kids are being taught today is not actually beneficial for how they're operating. And so that's why I was very against doing public schools, because I was unhappy. I've been quite unhappy over the past decade in seeing how far the quality of our education system has declined, particularly within the public education sphere. The last area of education are private schools. These widely vary. Very often they're associated with religious organizations. For example, from 3rd grade to 8th grade, I went to a private Catholic school. And not always the case, but they sometimes have uniforms. They sometimes require church. They often are. I don't think there's really any private schools that wouldn't charge, but I'm fairly certain all private schools will charge you for the education, which can range from thousands of dollars a year to hundreds of thousands of dollars a year if you're going to some like elite fancy like I don't know what to call it without coming off as insulting, because no shade to anyone that goes to them, but like the really bougie ones, the ones that we are never going to be able to afford to do, but maybe the Kardashians or something can afford to do. You know what I'm talking about. But they're paid, and oftentimes they're more strict than public schools, where they have much higher standards. They have higher expectations for behavior. They might have programs and subjects and experiences that are available to their students that would not be available to kids in public schools. And they often, not always the case, but they're often smaller class sizes, fewer teachers. But it's, just a different option available for parents that want to provide an education to their kids but aren't really happy with the public school system or have religious preferences or desires for their children. It's also a good way, even if you're like, my family was not religious per se. We were Christian, but we weren't really like devout, you go to church every Sunday type people. But my mom wanted me to be in a secure location that was heavily focused on like morality and good behavior and stuff like that, particularly because I was a toddler, I think, when Columbine happened. It was either Columbine or Virginia Tech, one of the two. But after that happened, she wanted a more secure school. And so that private school, like, you have to go through the office to be able to go into the school, and they had fences and whatever. So it was seen as a safer option than the public school campuses that you could just like walk into. So public schools will, the one that a parent will choose will often vary based on the needs and capabilities of the parent. For parents that are low income, chances are they're probably not going to be going to afford a private school education, because as I said, they can be quite costly, over $1,000 a month in a lot of cases. Parents that want less, like, who are very cognizant of their kids' education, or who, as I said, with myself, have specific wants for their kids, needs for their students, will potentially choose alternative sources of schooling, like Waldorf schools, which are, they're not charter schools, but they're similar in the sense that it's very focused on like children development, and they are not exactly a public school, but they are still, some you pay, some you don't. If I remember correctly, the Waldorf school near us, they do charge tuition, but I don't think all of them do. But again, Waldorf schools, their focus is educational excellence. And so they would have programs available and opportunities there for the kids that are a little bit beyond what public schools can offer. So getting into the differences, or getting into the like pros and cons, with homeschooling, one of the most glaring problems, if you would want to call it that, issues, is that unless the parent is outsourcing to other places, is putting their kids into other classes, is like they're being put into regular sports, they have tutors, there's like homeschooling groups, there might be Like out in the community, there's often like language immersion groups where you can all go together and speak in a certain language, just to help you learn. Social events. That child is going to be exposed to a far smaller group of individuals than a public school or private school child will have exposure to. And while this might be good for certain types of kids, particularly ones that are very sensitive or are highly advanced for their age, in most cases, lack of socialization can become a problem. And I think that's one of the reasons why homeschooling has such a bad rap up until probably COVID, I think, is when people really started to respect. And I've noticed the switch where people started to gear more towards homeschooling over public education. But if you don't supplement your child's education with social experiences enough, you can accidentally do your child a disservice by not giving them enough chances to socialize. And then you get the stereotypical weird kids that don't know how to have conversations or don't really have a friend group. They haven't really had a chance to maintain friendships over long periods of time, which is a very undervalued but crucial skill. Being able to maintain relationships is incredibly important for one's self-esteem. Like having that group of friends that you are able to grow up with does a lot for you socially, and mentally, making you feel like you're part of somewhere and that you have people besides your family that care about you and are interested in knowing you. It allows you to develop certain social skills that make it easier for you to enter the work world and the higher education world and just the social sphere that life is. I had that sort of on my end. While I was never homeschooled, I jumped around from school to school a lot, and so I didn't really have a solid base of friends. I went to preschool and kindergarten at one school, then I went to 1st through 3rd grade at a different school, then halfway through 3rd grade I went to the Catholic school. The first one, the kindergarten and preschool, that was at a private Episcopalian school. And then I went to a public 1 through 3. And then the private Catholic 3 through 8, 8th grade. And then I went to high school at a local public high school. And then I went to college. I definitely struggle, even to this day, with maintaining friendships and having friend groups. And I've become much more of a loner. And I think part of that has to do with my educational experience. I remember feeling very left out, especially when I went to the Catholic school, because they're very cliquey. Because I was not in school with them from kindergarten up through 8th grade, I entered into 3rd grade. They'd already kind of formed their friendships, and I was just kind of that outsider kid. And I still, to this day, remember when the yearbook for 8th grade came out, when they usually put through the years, showing our kids growing up. They excluded me from the group picture because I hadn't been there the entire time. I wasn't the only one. There's a couple kids that also came in late, but they were also excluded. It did definitely affect my social skills, not having that consistent interaction with the same people. And I think that's something that homeschoolers can also struggle with, where they're not able to have, they're not exposed to the same group of people for year after year after year. Because even in like clubs and groups and stuff, people filter in and out, so it's less constant. And I think that does affect you psychologically because you develop trust issues, you have a harder time making friends and holding on to friends and feel less secure in the friendships. Granted, it's not always the case. You can definitely get lucky and meet people and they are consistent. Like, of course, homeschoolers still have their like lifelong friends and stuff like that. But I think it does, if the parent doesn't homeschool in a way that prioritizes social engagement, it can leave kids feeling like they don't have a friend group, they don't fit in anywhere, and that will be piled on if they also are more alternative, like if their parents have different belief systems, whether it's religious or scientific or there can be some quote unquote hippie parents, I don't know what else to call it, but the ones that are like anti-government or potentially conspiracy theorists, or there's all sorts of people out there. No one is necessarily better than anyone else, but certain belief systems can affect your ability to make friends, especially if it's very like fringe type ideology. It can be hard to make friends when you think like that, because it might make people around you uncomfortable. Again, not saying there's anything wrong with any of these individuals. If you want to believe, you can believe what you believe, but there is still that like social norm aspect where if you're outside of the social norm, it can be harder to socialize with people because they're not trying to be understanding of your differing philosophies or ideologies. So yeah, homeschooling can be a detriment to kids if they're not given adequate socialization by opportunities by the parents. Additionally, the homeschooling is almost exclusively dependent on the parents' ability to educate their kids, to provide the what word I want, instruction. For example, if the parent does not have skill in mathematics, like myself, they might struggle to adequately educate their child. That's for example why I told myself that I would wait until middle school, because by that point I knew that my skill was no longer going to be adequate enough to teach them all of the subjects. They're like, everyone has their blind spots. You can't know everything. And that was always my cutoff point where I was like, all right, at that point, I know that I'm not going to be able to provide all of their educational needs. And so then I'd give them the option. But I ended up choosing to go with the charter school because as I mentioned earlier, the socialization aspect, I wanted to make sure that my son had the opportunity to make friends and not feel the same way that I did, to have groups of friends that he can consistently see and hang out with and grow up with. But also, full honesty, I realized that I probably wasn't actually a good fit to be a homeschooling parent, because I love education. I love educating myself. I love reading. I am very, very skilled. I hope I'm not coming off as bragging, but I'm very skilled with writing. I have a lot of experience in that area, both professionally and through my own practices and stuff like that. And then I also have a very deep understanding of a wide variety of sciences, but I'm also super ADHD. And it's really hard for me to even stay on top of my own stuff. Even though I'm not diagnosed with it, I'm fairly certain I'm autistic because of how I am. But I was realizing that my own patterns of behavior were not going to be beneficial to my kids. Where as much as I wanted to do this for them, it was more so wishful thinking, because I realized that while I could provide the informational material, I could teach them how to write. Already my son knows his full alphabet. He knows how to write the full alphabet, uppercase and lowercase. He does flip letters sometimes, but that's typical. He knows some basic addition and subtraction. He's kind of sort of starting to grasp multiplication, and then he can read. But I don't have the structural capabilities to create a schedule and stick to it, and that is very important to they're so loud. I also speaking of, I don't have the patience a lot to give hours of my day to them. But I realized that a lot of my shortcomings could potentially detriment his skills, because even in school, I was hopelessly disorganized. I was the kid with the locker with all the papers shoved into the locker. My binder was never organized. I was always losing my homework, forgetting it at home. I would do the homework, I just wouldn't bring it in, or I would forget it altogether, or I'd never complete projects because of procrastination. And I realized that I could accidentally rub those habits off on my son if I wasn't careful. And I realized that I just did not have the capacity to change everything about myself just to make sure that he got what he needed. A lot of my habits are very ingrained, and while I'm not saying I'm not capable of change, I just knew that I was not going to be able to make the necessary changes within the time frame that he needs it to be. Because technically, he would have been in preschool at this point, but I chose to homeschool him for this year. And with that recognition, that realization that I really wanted to emotionally, but I have to do what's best for him. So I decided to find this low-tech school, because that was really my biggest thing. My gripe right now with public schools is that I think a lot of them do a disservice to a lot of students. There's a lot of issues going on right now with the public school system. One of the glaring aspects is the threat of violence within schools, not only from outsiders, but even within the students themselves. There's also, I watch these videos so often, the teachers just being burnt out, quitting en masse. I've heard so many different horror stories from public schools of classrooms that literally have had no teacher for weeks because they couldn't find anyone to teach the class. So they're basically just sitting alone while one teacher jumped from class to class, just giving them stuff to do. A lot of them are becoming very reliant on worksheets and devices to teach kids. And I've heard of teachers just completely giving up and letting the kids be on their phones or do whatever the heck they want. The behaviors of students is also declining terribly, which is the parents' fault, to be honest. There is a subsect of the population that kind of has this entitled, I do what I want to do and you're not going to tell me what to do type of attitude, which is not going to work in an educational system. You really have to give up some of your control and trust to the teacher to do what they know is best, which a lot of teachers don't get the opportunity to do anyways, because the administration also does not treat teachers well. They do not teach them. I mean, they do not pay them well. They do not offer the resources that they need. Majority of school teachers that I've seen discussing their experience in school pay for everything out of pocket, and don't have adequate resources to provide the students what they need. And we're also seeing a declining ability within students as well. I've heard of horror stories again of college students getting accepted and their professors finding out that they don't know the full alphabet, they don't know all the numbers, they don't know how to do addition or multiplication, that the No Child Left Behind policies in most states allow teachers or the schools to push kids ahead even if they haven't learned anything. And we have record numbers of kids who cannot read at their level. And there's also a massive increase in the number of schools that don't require reading full books anymore, which to me is crazy. Like education is reading, writing, math, and subjects that help you understand the world around you. I don't understand how you can teach reading without making somebody read a full book, because reading a full book gives you the whole perspective of the book. Like, you can't just read excerpts and understand the whole book. Like, you have to read the whole book to understand the point and the characters and the interplay and whatever type of book it is. There's details in every single page that are important to understanding the overall message of whatever that book is about. And watching all these videos, I was horrified. I had a very hands-on, experiential education at the Catholic school. Like, we had Colonial Day, where we had to come to school dressed in like colonial outfits. And the school, like the classroom was set up to look like a 1700s school. And so we got to see what it was like. We also went on a lot of field trips. That's actually another thing. Just Chef, one of the things that you said, there's a lot of resources available. But one of the other complications to things, which is really kind of my deciding factor, for those of you that don't know, I have a seizure disorder, and I'm unable to drive. And so that was another thing, because besides the local park and the local pool, there really isn't a way for me to take my kids out places. And so I basically have to wait until the weekends when my husband is off work to take them to like museums and art galleries and nature places and stuff like that. And we don't really, like, we're kind of in a suburby place, so there's not really anywhere we could walk to. And then the buses aren't really that available. They're far, like, you have to walk really far to get to the bus area because of how our like community is set up. And so that was another reason where I felt like he deserved to have more experiences than I was able to give him, despite me wanting to give him those experiences. I just couldn't. So yeah, I was absolutely mortified seeing what the experiences other teachers have in school and what other students are seeing in school. And for one of the quotes that stuck out in my mind from one of the many videos that I've watched, the teacher said she's been teaching for like 20, 30 years. And it used to be there was like 2 or 3 bad kids in the entire classroom, but now there's like 2 or 3 good kids and the rest are all bad, in that they constantly talking, interrupting, they're rude, they're aggressive to each other, they don't care. I've seen some videos that were taken in the classroom of students like saying some really horrific things to their teachers. There was one that I heard a couple months ago where the student straight up told the teacher, "I hope you get pew-pewed." And it was like a 3rd grader or 2nd grader. There was a kindergarten teacher that said called the C word by one of her students, which is wild to me. There's another and then also, not all teachers are like this, but there's also teachers that are displaying the same behaviors. I've seen there's a teacher that got fired for making dance videos on her Snapchat with her students, like her 6th, 7th, 8th grade students. They'd be doing like twerking videos and dancing to like Cardi B and stuff like that. There obviously are all the cases of teachers having very inappropriate relations with students in various ways. So there's also that aspect that has happened at both schools that I went to. My middle school, we had a teacher that got fired, or he was a substitute. He got fired because he like came into class. He was subbing for a science teacher. He came into class and like, he basically was like, "I'm not going to do anything today. I'm just going to be here. Just do what you need to do. If you have assignments, do whatever." And he put his legs up on the desk, like he was sitting the whole like lazy teen style. But he had no underwear on and a rip down his crotch. So that was the only time I ever saw that substitute teacher there. And then in high school, there's this teacher that all my friends liked, and everyone would always try and hang out in his room during lunch period. But I didn't understand it. I was like, I don't get why you like him. I just don't resonate with this person. But the one time, it was like a rainy day, I went in with my friends into the classroom to just hang out with them. And I remember finding it weird that the cheerleaders were sitting on his desk and one of them was sitting on his lap. And sure enough, like maybe 2 months later, we found out he got arrested for doing things with some of the students. So there's a lot going on in our schools, particularly granted, this isn't even just public schools. Like this also is happening in private schools. But there's enough going on that I just was not comfortable putting my kid into a public education system. But unfortunately, for some people, that's all that might be available to them. Not every parent has the opportunity to pick a fancy school. Obviously, like charter schools and some of the other specialty schools will have a limited number of spots available. So not every child will have the opportunity to be in one of those types of schools, but it is still important to try and find the best school for you, for your child, to make sure they're getting the best education possible. And to any parents, if your child is voicing concerns about their school, their teachers, listen to them, because we put our trust in these adults to take care of our kids, but not all of them are great. Like, I will say, teachers deserve to be respected. We do not give teachers enough respect. They are mistreated. They are harassed and bullied by both students, parents, and the administration. They work exceptionally long hours to make sure our kids are educated to the best of their ability, but they're burning candles on both ends. They don't have enough resources. They're not paid enough. And there's a lot of issues with the school districts, in that a lot of public schools teach to the test. They don't teach to the kids' needs. They teach to what will get them funding. And I think that's another huge issue, which is why kids are overwhelmingly struggling, because we have not, like, we've strayed away from actual education tactics and have moved towards teaching what gets us money. So yeah. Let's see, what haven't I talked about? One of the other things that I've noticed in schools now is that they're kind of giving up on students altogether, where the kids are so far behind, they just don't know how to work with them anymore. Like, there are 8th graders that cannot finish a 3rd grade level book. And, like, to give you an idea, like there are like 5th graders, 6th graders, middle school students that would struggle to read a book like this. There are high school students that graduate not knowing the alphabet. I kind of said this earlier, where like even college students are getting up there, and the professors are like, how did you graduate? Like, you don't know anything. And the parents also can make their own kids a menace to the teachers. I heard this another story a couple months ago, might have been like 6 months ago at this point, where parents will sometimes like get their kids to spy on the teachers. They'll send them in undercover, trying to catch the teachers doing something wrong. That way they can complain to the school and get them to give them what they want. There's a lot of stories I've heard of parents trying to bully the teachers into just giving their kids a good grade, even though the kid didn't actually work for it, didn't know the stuff. So the entitlement is going beyond the students themselves, but is actually affecting the parents as well. So that there's a lot. There is so much going on in public schools right now that I think are doing a disservice to students overall. The teachers can't handle the amount of students they have. The students' behaviors are absolutely out of control. The district doesn't care about how the students do, as long as they're passing the tests, as long as they have a graduation rate. And of course, the state itself doesn't really want to pay. A lot of states want to make as much money as possible, because then the politicians are the ones that get that money. And they'd rather get money from like corporations and stuff like that. So they don't want to have to give to the education system. That's such a waste of money. Why would we want to give our money to them when we could just get corporations to put their businesses and stuff in our cities? So there's a lot. There's a lot going on right now. And if this stuff interests you, I highly suggest looking at on YouTube, like TikTok compilations of teachers talking about why they quit. That can give you a very, very good idea of what the school system is facing. And this is not just like, oh, social media, YouTube, like this is what people are saying. They actually put out a warning. The Department of Education, the state or countrywide Department of Education put out a warning saying that I think it's like 60% of students can't read at their age level. Let's see. And even their parents. Like I saw another video where that's another thing. The parents, especially ones that put their kids in school, they expect that the teacher is going to do everything for them. I remember watching this video of a parent of a third grader, and she was complaining because the teacher told her that she needed to read with her child more often. And she straight up was like, you expect me to teach her how to read? You're the teacher. I don't even know how to read. Wow. So the statistic, according to the National Literacy Institute, go back. Approximately 40% of students across the nation cannot read at a basic level, with almost 70% of low-income fourth graders struggling with basic reading skills. And 21, as of June 2025, 21, and this was last year, it probably got worse. 21% of U.S. adults are classified as functionally illiterate, unable to complete basic reading tasks. And the average American reads at a 7th to 8th grade level. Adults scoring in the lowest literacy levels increased 9 percentage points between 2017 to 2023. And let's see, where's that other one? In 2023, 44% of U.S. adults scored at level 3 literacy or above, indicating strong reading or comprehension skills. So less than half of the country have strong reading skills. 28% scored below level 1, which means they have significant difficulty with everyday reading tasks. So literacy in this country is tanking. Here's another: 44% of American adults do not read books at all in a year, which is horrible to think about, considering that like reading is what it does so much for you. I'll have to do a whole different episode just on reading, the importance of reading and what it does for you, how important it is to read the classics, to read about history, to read about other things that interest you. But to give you an idea, here's another stat. A mother's reading skill is the greatest determinant of her child's future academic success, outweighing other factors such as neighborhood and family income. So even if you're low income, even if you live in the most terrible neighborhood in the whole state, your mother's reading level is really what will determine your academic success, which is key in understanding why you have to pick the right school system for like homeschooling versus in-person schooling. Is really the mother's engagement, the parents' engagement in that child's education, regardless of whether they're homeschooling or whether they're in school. A parent needs to be engaged with their child's education. It is extremely important, and we have a widespread belief now at least from what I've seen in people's discussions, that teachers are responsible for all of the education, which is simply not true. Teachers cannot be fully responsible for everything your child needs to learn. They can't teach your kid how to cook. They can't teach your kid how to behave. They can't teach your kid how to have morals. They can't teach your kid how to read if you are not reinforcing this at home. And we have so many parents now, so many adults now that are themselves addicted to technology, on their phone constantly, on social media constantly, not interacting with their child, not having conversations with their child, and not reading themselves. And this, I think, is crucial to understanding why we have such a poor school system, poor outcomes for all of our students, and why we need to do major work on what we're doing right now in the education system and with our kids. One other example that comes to mind is, one second. Sorry. There is also a record number of kids that are entering into preschool, kindergarten, even first, second, third grade that are not potty trained. And the parents are coming in expecting the teachers to do that. They're not allowed to. That is against their job description, and that is against the rules. You are not allowed to change somebody else's child unless you have an actual role to do that, like a nanny or something like that. But teachers are not going to change your child. They're not going to potty train their child. Their job is to teach your child how to learn effectively. And that's just another example of how parents are trying to put everything onto he was trying to parent my daughter for me. It was just repeating the stuff that I was saying to him. But yeah, parents have to accept the responsibility for teaching their child, whether or not their child is homeschooled, has specialty tutors, is in private school, is in public schools. Parents are what is most important in their child's education. You can have the worst teacher in the world, but if your parent is engaged with your education, they can scaffold your education and make sure you're still getting what they need. They're the ones that are going to stand up for their child if things are going wrong at school with other students, with the teacher, with whatever. Parents need to be present in their child's life in a way that they're paying attention. They need to be paying attention, because oftentimes when things are going wrong, it comes off very subtly at first. Like a child that is struggling to learn, struggling with math and reading, will be resistant to doing work, and they might be disengaged from their work. But if a parent just gets frustrated and gets mad at them because, oh, well, why can't you do this? You should know this by now, belittles them and stuff like that, it's going to discourage the child further. So regardless of what form of education your child is partaking in, the important take-home message is, as a parent, you have to be involved no matter what. Whether they have an outside teacher or whether they are relying on you as a teacher, you have to be present for them. And you also have to be okay with educating yourself, continuing to better yourself and add more skills to your toolbox, to maximize your child's success in school. You don't have to be perfect. No parent, no teacher is perfect. No school is perfect. But trying and consistency, and making sure that at least you're gearing this education to the child's age is going to make a huge difference in the success of your child. So, yeah, I know this was a tiny bit of a rambling, not as scientific topic this time, but I hope you learned something new. I also encourage you to look into, especially if your child is going to be in school or you plan to have a child and are wondering what you want to do. I highly suggest researching what it's like in schools nowadays, particularly in your own areas, trying to understand what teachers go through. It's very important that if you are putting your child in school, that you have a respect for the teacher that they have, because for the most part, most teachers want the best for your students. They're not out to get your students. If your child is missing homework or not doing well on the test, I guarantee most of the time it's probably not because the teacher is trying to get at your child or whatever. It's just your child might be struggling with their time management skills or intimidated by the subject. They might need somebody to walk them through certain things. Some subjects take longer than others. Like I caught on to reading and science and history, stuff like that I can absorb through reading very rapidly, but I suck at math. I am not good at math at all. But yeah, being present for your child will help you understand these various aspects about them and how to best cater their education to what they need. So yeah, a lot of stuff to think about. It's a big decision. And I highly suggest anyone investigating, wanting to put their kids into school or wanting to homeschool, do your research. Try and understand the best practices, the best schools around you, the best ways to give your child what they need, because there will be a best option for each family, and it's not going to be consistent across the board. Like homeschooling is not going to be for everybody, but public schools are also not for everybody. Private schools are not for everybody. So you have to figure out what works best for you, for your child, and can provide for those needs, whether or not you can be the one in control of the education or not. So I hope you learned a lot. I hope this introduced you to topics that maybe you didn't know about, or ideas that hadn't occurred to you hadn't thought of before. And I'll definitely do a separate episode on reading and the illiteracy crisis and the benefits and necessities of reading, because that's definitely obviously a huge problem, very interesting to me, and something that I think we can further learn from. So I wanted to thank everybody for watching. We had a couple, we had 173 and Goat 3645, and then of course Chef and David joining us today. So thank you guys for being here, for your participation. I appreciate your comments, and I'm glad you're able to join us. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions or are interested in any future topics. We enjoy talking to you guys. And again, I hope you learned something.
Examining his own attitude towards the possibilities of peace, towards the Soviet Union, towards the course of the Cold War.
Art muscle. It was a way of making me feel that they were a part of me.
You see it on the bridge. If the government had to change the screw in the bridge, they have to shut it down. They got state troopers out there. They got lanes closed. They got those strange machines. How did they get up